like to say hello to all the Beeteam 6 members, and today I've got a video planned where I'll be showing some particular things that you will see during your inspections. Many of you are asking me various questions about what you're seeing in your hive, so I just want to start showing you those things so that you can become familiar with what some of these things are. Some of you may already know that and be familiar, but it'd be a good reminder. And some of you may think you know what they are, and you may be surprised. So let's get started in a hive. You know, obviously the first thing you want to do is check for a small hive beetle under the top cover. That's essential. As you can see here, this is honey that's been capped over around the top of the frame. And the material here is propolis. They gather this up from trees and plants and bring it back, and it's kind of the sticky stuff they use in the hive. So we got honey here that's been capped over, and then next to that, as you can see here, and I'll zoom in closer in a minute, this is nectar. And as we go into here, we see a combination of bee bread, which is pollen with a little nectar and enzymes in it, as well as pollen, but this is mostly bee bread. And this is honey around the outer edges. If we poke it, it'll drip. And then this would be nectar. It's glistening. It's not capped over, so we don't call that honey yet. It's just nectar. And bee bread in various colors of pollen. This is another thing that many of you will ask me about, and that is the connective tissue. This is the bottom of a frame that I just pulled out, and you can see there's connective tissue. Sometimes we call it burr comb. Generally, this is always filled with drones. And so some of you have asked me, what are these little white things, worms or grubs, between the frames? This is because this comb was connected from the bottom of this frame to the top of the one below it, and they were raising drones. So this is actually drone larvae that you're seeing here. This is a queen cup. It's not unusual for there to be queen cups throughout the hive, even though this one has nothing in it. Now this is a frame of brood. These bees on top of it are actually keeping it warm. That's why they're there. This brood below there is capped over, so it has to be kept 92.5 degrees. We have a little bit of honey around the outer edges of this brood frame. As you can see up here, it's white. It's a little more waxier. Now, maybe you're struggling with the difference between how to identify honey versus brood, and I'm going to show you the difference. Let me move these bees out of the way a little bit. Let's do it right here in the camera. Well, if you move the bees out of the way, you can see what brood looks like. It's usually darker in color, and it looks more velvety. It looks more like cloth versus the honey here, which is more waxy, a more wet look. This has a more dry look to it. And when you're examining your brood, you want to look for what we call a good brood pattern. And that means solid brood pattern. There are some empty places where the queen didn't lay eggs, or these just emerged. And there's a bee cleaning out one of the cells right there. So, this is a frame of brood surrounded by honey that's been capped over. On this frame, again, we have honey around the outer edges. We have a little bit of capped pupa of worker bees here. And then this, some of you may not know what this is, but this is actually drone brood. Now, the way that you can tell the difference is this brood area that the bees are raising worker bees under is actually very smooth, like we've seen. Very level across the top. Very even with the comb. However, this that I'm pointing at now is uneven, and look how it looks like little bullets sticking up through the comb. It's elevated above the comb. It's much larger. You can actually see how the drone brood is actually sticking up. So in comparison, we have worker brood here and drone brood here. And so these are male bees. all colonies are going to have some amount, of drone brood mixed in with the worker brood, because this is swarm season. So these bees here have to produce drones to mate with other bees from other colonies that are producing swarms and need a queen to be mated. And so the queen, if this hive were to make a new queen, she would not mate with any of the drones here, because those drones, of course, are her brothers. And but she flies to a drone congregation area to mate with drones from other hives. So let me see here. For example, you might see this in your hive and wonder what's that little bump out there. Again, this is worker brood here, but there's a bump out of a drone pupa underneath here. Now this hive is doing exceptionally well. So as I sometimes tell many of you that sometimes you want to equalize your colonies, and so I'm going to do that. I've got a smaller colony that I want to work on, and so I'm going to take this frame here that's of capped brood, and I'm going to move it over to a colony that needs a little bit more strength to it. And so here, as you can see, this is going to be mainly just capped over brood. Capped over brood being transferred over to another colony that may be a little weaker allows them to have an upcoming workforce without much liability. In other words, if you move a frame of open brood over to a weak hive, that weak hive has to care for all the open brood by feeding larvae. So I'm going to move this over to a weaker hive. And when I move this over, I'm just going to move it with bees and all. Not going to shake off any bees. Okay, so again, here's some little burr comb that's been filled with drone pupa. Now, I want to show you on this frame some of the different things that we'll see. Like here is a very young bee. It's more white. The hair is a little brighter color white. It's hard to see, but right here at the end of my finger, very young bee. Also, let's find the difference between workers and drones. Some of you may be struggling to know that. So here's a drone right here at the tip of my finger. You can see his abdomen is larger, and he's walking around among his sisters. So you see him right there. So that's not a queen. Don't think it is. It's not. It's a drone. And I'll pick him up. If I can get just right, get his wings. Okay, so I've picked this drone up, and you can sort of see what he looks like up close. Get my camera to focus on him. So this is what the drone looks like. You can see his eyes maybe. He's different in size than all the other workers. And I'll put him back down here, and you can kind of watch him. Well, he's not going to want to jump on the frame, maybe. Stay on my hand. Drones do not have stingers. They have only the male genitalia for mating with virgin queens. And they're loud when they take off. Here's another drone right here, walking around among the workers. So start to see the difference between workers and male drones. This is a male drone right here. Also, when you're inspecting a hive and you pull some frames out, again, several of you have questioned, what is this between the frames? Like here is a glob of something right here at the end of my hive tool. Well, this is actually, again, the burr comb, and for some reason, they've chosen to build this up. Now, this particularly can be built up if your frames are not directly above the one below it. 10 frames can be scattered or shifted, and that may create a little space, as in this case here. So I would recommend that the frame above this one needs to be right above it, and there wouldn't be that space there. and they'll just periodically build some burr comb, and of course it'll be filled with drone pupae. For example, you can see how these frames don't align. Like this frame here is showing. That means that the frame above it, this one here, is slightly to my right, allowing space. So there's going to be a gap from the end of my hive tool, if that one's off too, to that place, and that's where they begin to build this burr comb. Wow, this is a good tip, isn't it? And it's hard to do. You have to use your eyes, look down there, make sure you know where your frames are going to go. But anyway, good tip on preventing that burr comb between frames is to line the top frame up with the bottom frame, because there is spacing. So I've replaced a frame with a drawn comb and an undrawn comb, and I've taken a frame of brood, actually 2 out of this very strong colony, and I've placed these over here into this more of a starter hive here. But I want to show you how there is no problem when you do this transfer over. You can simply put them in and the bees don't fight or anything. Here's a good thing to look at. So you might see something like this and wonder what this is. Let's just see if we can play with that a little bit. So this is actually just a drone, not fully developed. Maybe it went bad or something, you know, got torn open. A little bit of the cocoon sac there that's bright white, and the maybe underdeveloped pupa of a drone from that area down there. So anyway, I want to show you how the bees don't fight when you add a bunch of bees to another colony early in the year. Okay, so the hive in my hand here is from the other hive, and I'm just going to place it right alongside in this hive. And let's just see what kind of reaction we get. I'm going to move the other. I've made a little gap there. I didn't want it to be by itself, so I put it between frames so it can stay warm. But you can see, very good. Bees are talking to each other, commingling, no problem. You can do that early in the year, but you don't want to do it much past end of July, when bees have a lot of stored honey and they're more protective. Another thing I want to show you is this. This is stray comb being built because the bees really would rather have some more space to put that wax on. So if you ever see this on a top cover, this is below a top cover, it means the bees really want more room to be able to build more comb on, instead of just wasting wax on the top of a frame like that. This is often something that people will ask me about, is this extra comb on the tops of frames. What is it? Is it okay to have it there? What should we do with it? I usually leave mine because it is often mixed with propolis, and it's wax and propolis kind of mixed together. And again, filling gaps is all they're doing, putting stray comb like here. But if you want to be a tidy person, certainly you can scrape all of that off. I usually leave it, but in my case, it does mean that my bees would like another box. You can see they're building wax everywhere they can. So if I give them another box, they're going to do really well. Again, this is propolis being built up on places, on edges of frames, along the boxes here. It's the glue. It's also part of the bee's immune system as well. It kills a lot. It's antimicrobial, so it helps control pathogens in the hive. You also sometimes see insects and critters. Here's a spider on a hive. These will bite you. This is a jumping spider, like a mosquito bite. They're not venomous. They have different colors on their back. They can have red, green, or white, I believe. They're really sharp-looking, fast-moving, hard-working spiders. And yep, they eat bees, but you can tell they're pretty small. Their diet's going to be not a threat to your hive. And this jumping spider is actually looking at us, watching us move. They have a lot of eyes. This one, I think, has 8 eyes, 8 legs, of course. And, you know, if we move, you can see it kind of follow us and raising its head. It would jump on us. So try not to get bit by one of these. It's rare it would bite you. But they linger around your hive and try to get a stray bee once in a while. Oh, they're confused sometimes with a black widow because of a red dot on their back. But this is not a black widow. Okay, Beeteam6, thanks for watching today. I hope you've enjoyed learning some more things about what you see in a hive. And I really hope that you'll continue to tell other people about Beeteam6 and what you're learning and benefiting from. Thanks for being a member. We'll see you next time.